thank you for coming, Paola, and it's great to meet you. So please introduce yourself, because most people from my channel will not know you, and what you're doing, and yeah.
Well, thank you, Michael. My name is Paola Harris. I'm Italian. I'm an investigative journalist. Most of my work has been done in Europe, and I lived in Europe in Rome, Italy, from 1992 to 2007 when I moved back to the United States. And I've done several cases, and one of the reasons that we're speaking today was one of the cases that I have done was the Billy Meier case, because I lived in Rome and it was very easy to get to Hinterschmidrüti in Switzerland. And I went with two of my colleagues, two ufologists, and we did it as a semi-vacation because we didn't know what to expect. And we were invited to go, and I want to tell the general public that it is open on Sundays because we were invited to go by a member of FIGU. And because I do field research, I needed to see for myself the area. And of course, I was hoping to speak to Billy. I did have interaction with Billy, and I can talk about that, but never interviewed him. Now, I must say, before I did this, I had come to the United States, to Boulder, Colorado, where I lived, and I had called Wendell Stevens on the telephone. And I said, Wendell, before I do this story, tell Billy I'm coming, and then I need to know your experience with this case so I know what the proper questions are to ask Billy if I could ever interview him. And so I flew to Tucson, Arizona. I spent 5 hours in the airport with Wendell. He proceeded to tell me all the details of the research that he and Britt and the elders did. Now, I already knew Jim Dilatoso. I knew him from the Phoenix Lights case. So when he's mentioning people in the field, since I know most of the people, I had a background in this. And I had a background in going to do this because I can't just go cold, and like most of my cases, I have to either read the person's book or have to meet the person to be able to answer intelligent questions. I can't just be floundering around. And before I go into this, I will tell you that what I'm sharing with you is that this is data collection for me. I've written 7 books, and they're all interviews word for word. My biggest story was Colonel Philip Corso, who with Bill Burns wrote The Day After Roswell, but that was not his original manuscript. So when I did the Corso story, he was working in the Pentagon under General Trudeau. He came out in the 50th anniversary of Roswell in 1997 saying that Roswell was real and they had back engineered the artifacts. So for me, that turned the page for data. Because here's somebody who worked in the Pentagon, here's somebody who had the artifacts, here's somebody who was the real deal, and he was coming forth with the truth. And this always shocks me, because 1997 is when Colonel Corso, told the story, and now we're in 2024 and everybody's looking at disclosure. Well, that was in 1997. There was a lawsuit against The Day After Roswell. So Colonel Corso spoke in Italy because I brought him to Italy. I was living in Italy. And he did 2 major conferences, one in Pescara and one in San Marino, which is an independent republic. The whole world was there, scientists were there, and so forth. So I had done that, and that was data. The other data...
Why didn't he talk in America?
Because it was a lawsuit against the book, and when you have a lawsuit, your lawyers tell you can't talk.
Okay.
You can't go on a show and say anything. Yeah. And that's the way to shut something down, by the way.
Yeah.
That is one of the ways to stop a story. You either do a lawsuit or you have a scandal, one or the other. You can think of a whole bunch of ways, but... They are mechanisms for which the people that are directly involved are shut down or can't speak.
Yeah.
So it was.
So you brought him to Italy.
I brought him to Italy, and he spoke on the Italian television. He spoke on The Tonight Show. He spoke at Pescara with Robert Dean, Wendell Stevens, and Carlos Diaz. So Wendell Stevens was there when Colonel Corso spoke in 1998 in Pescara, Italy. And then in San Marino, which is an independent republic like Monaco. And that was an international conference. That had Boris Shirinoff from Russia. It had Messin from Belgium. It had the representative from France. It had several very key players in the international set, because you're dealing with a real witness, a real person that is saying, number one, this is real. Roswell happened 1947. Number two, all of us, what do you think we're going to do? Throw away the artifacts? That this happened to be the Army that Colonel Corso worked with, the Army, because the Air Force and Army were together in 1945 and they split up in 1947. So mentally you have to go, well, maybe the Air Force has some things, they just don't have a Colonel Corso to talk about. Because one of the arguments about the back engineering was it's already in the mainstream. Well, it's already in the mainstream if the contracts were given by military. So Colonel Corso said, and he always used to repeat, the reason why we did this was so we could get contracts for this technology to enhance the competitive edge of the Army. So you got to remember, we're just dealing with Army with Colonel Corso. And the whole Corso story for me has been a series of synchronicities. I went to Roswell, I met him, brought him to Italy. Colonel Corso's story, made me a personality in Italy because I did the investigative journalism work there and in Europe. And then later on in my career, I worked with Jacques Vallée on the Trinity case, which is a crash in 1945 in a place called San Antonio, New Mexico, 13 miles away from the Trinity site, and 3 miles away from where Oppenheimer had his cabins at the behind the El Barn Cafe. So I started working on this, but I had read about it in Italy. When I moved to America in 2007, Synchronicities, the pilot that flew over that area, his son called me and told me about the two little boys that had seen the crash, that had seen the beings, and that had lived through the week-long recovery. So I started working on it by myself. And because there was metal involved, 5 years later, Jacques Vallée called to me and said, I'd love to work with you on this case. And then consequently, we wrote the book about the Trinity case, which was before Roswell. It was 1 month. It was August 16th, 1945, 1 month after the atomic bomb. So I'm convinced everybody knew. Everybody knows this reality. Everybody knows. If Oppenheimer and Einstein were there and were having problems with sightings, and how do we know that? There is a letter which I'm giving you to translate it into whatever language by Einstein as part of the MJ-12 documents, which has been forensically, linguistically validated. This Oppenheimer, who was the scientist from the Manhattan Project, and Einstein talked to President Truman about the problem with UFOs. But they didn't look at it as a problem. What's so beautiful, and this is why it leads into the Billy Meier case, is the name of this document is Relationships with Inhabitants of Celestial Bodies. So they're taking it for granted there's got to be a relationship. They're not little gray aliens, they're people, and they have culture. And what they suggest in this, and you can talk more about this yourself when you translate it, is that we needed to create not the United Nations because it couldn't handle it, but a supra-United Nations for diplomatic reasons. And they wrote it to President Truman, but when I saw the date, and the date is June of 1947, and Roswell happened in July of 1947. They're talking about another crash.
Yeah, sure.
So I'm hoping that you'll you'll talk at length about this because it was written by Einstein. This particular document was written by Einstein because they knew. I keep saying people knew. They know. They definitely know.
Yeah.
And so what was great about this, what's great about what we're going to talk about today is that we have to look at all the data, all of it. And in the 50s and 60s, the contacts were humanoid space brother. They call them space brothers at the Giant Rock Group. And
but the military decides. I talked with Billy about it, that like in 1991, there's footage from the space shuttle where you see an object in lower orbit in outer space, and like a streak of light is shooting at it from the Earth. It's not coming from outer space. And it zigs away into just a split second earlier, it zigs into space. And so the military is chasing extraterrestrial spacecraft to get access to this technology. And this is really a huge problem which the world doesn't know about at all, that the military is doing basically it's warfare behind our backs. And Billy said, well, yeah, we should kind of try to open up a line of communication and talk first and not go to war first or shoot first and then ask questions later. But it's exactly what you say. It's like this criminal bunch took over and just tries to get the competitive edge in the military. That it's all about getting access to technology and not about establishing contact and kind of like super United Nations, that they would communicate with them and start.
Would have a diplomatic, but they don't think that way.
No, they think in war.
But President Eisenhower, before he left office, and I would replay that speech, said before he left office, he said, beware of the military-industrial complex.
Right.
And
that's where it came from. It's before nobody used it. The people weren't even aware that this complex existed, really. There was the military and there was the industry, but that they're closely interlinked for a long time already. That term he coined in that speech. And I think it's a very, very good term.
It's a whole secret. When I met Corso, I thought, why can't they tell the truth? Is it religion? What is it? And I realized it was money. After I met Corso, I realized, well, they can't, because if they tell the truth, they'll say that since 1945, now we know that they didn't throw away the craft. They didn't throw away the technology.
Of course not.
Logically, it's competitive. Contractors that need the technology, that get the technology. And it's also, like Stephen Greer says, is to keep a cap on the petrodollar.
Yeah.
Because if they could figure out how these things fly, they don't need gas and oil.
Right. And the petrodollar game over.
And that game over in the economy of the planet. So I suggest people just use logic.
Well, I wouldn't say game over for the economy, but game over for their game, of exploitation. And it would shift the power towards people and other people. And they would lose power. And they don't want that. They're obsessed with power. Well,
it's who has the most toys. It's whatever country has the most toys and the most the most technological edge. The only thing I see it. I'll tell you how I see it. I see it as a game of chess, and you can only win if you have checkmate constantly. If I have a bigger bomb than you, and then I get the bigger bomb, it's checkmate, 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 because there's no winning. This is a no-win situation.
Absolutely, but. They don't care about that as long as they get their contracts, make money. And now the big scare is like, they're opening up for the topic. Like they have hearings and so on, and they supposedly leaked Pentagon videos, and it's actually discussed now seriously. And it's the phenomenon is real, but we don't know what it is. But it is a threat. You know, if they don't know what it is, how supposedly, if they don't know what it is, how can it be a threat? You know,
because
how do
that's
they
the only way you get money.
Right.
I mean, the only way you get money is the military-industrial complex to make the weapons against the threat. They're not going to make money saying, looking at this in an esoteric way, like maybe there are inhabitants, and like Einstein says, inhabitants in the universe that maybe we could learn from and have a diplomatic relation. That isn't the thinking. When you have used the national security card, I call it the national security card. It's a matter of national security. We told them not to be in our airspace. They shouldn't be in our airspace. Therefore, they are an enemy. Period. And it's clear. It's cut and dry. We're the only planet, I think. I was friends with Edgar Mitchell, the astronaut, and he told me that when he was in outer space on his way to the moon, he didn't see borders on the planet, and he didn't see what people were fighting about. He saw a beautiful blue planet with water, and he said he had a spiritual experience. That's why Edgar Mitchell came back. He was an engineer. He left NASA and he started Noetic Sciences, the Institute for Noetic Sciences, which is using entanglement and different modern quantum physics to explain what we already know. So what if you look at the world the way Edgar Mitchell looked at it from outside, it is ridiculous that we have that we're fighting over borders, because there are no borders from outer space. That's all stuff we created. The reason
I think most of them or all of them are really changed when they come back from outer space.
Well, it's another perspective.
It's really, you see no borders and you see no point in this war. I mean, really understanding that there's no point to these wars. It's just, it's not just thinking. It makes no sense, but have a feeling like a strong.
We're not there yet, though.
No.
Because you and I had this conversation, and I said, look, I've got all this data. I've written 7 books. I've interviewed everybody in the world. I used to work with Dr. J. Allen Hynek. I knew John Mack. I know most of the people in the field. I've interviewed contactees in South America. I've done a lot of work, but that's data. But in the end, Billy and I are on the same wavelength, I think, even with you people, that this is about the raising of human consciousness. This race of humans needs to grow up.
Yeah, it's really about evolving in consciousness.
And growing up.
Yeah, growing up, basically.
Yeah,
Compared to them, it's growing up.
Yeah, because we're still in an infantile stage where we're fighting each other. We all have children. We're all mothers, I remember the Dalai Lama saying something like the woman in the family, the mother, really could do a lot for world peace, because we all don't want our children to die in war, and we have more in common than we have different.
Yeah.
But somehow we get into a pattern, whether it be politics, religion, or any of the institutions we've created on Earth, and that's the financial ones too, where there's more separation than there is unity.
Yeah, the Machiavellian principle, divide and rule, and this is applied everywhere. The religions divide, politics divide. When it comes to going to war, then in politics they're on the same page, strangely. And also economically, that the stock market rises when war starts. It's all for this war effort. And the country that has the greatest weapons or most dangerous weapons is the one who runs the show, pretty much. It's so ridiculous.
Right. You're absolutely right. But I think what our job is to inspire now, to not look at that. Yeah. Because we were talking about whether we watch the news, and I don't want the vibration to be so low when I'm watching these things, thinking that's the way it is. That's the way it is, but that isn't the way it needs to be. Our job is to inspire people to be more. And I think one of the things that you can do is, if you go out in the night sky, and I have a piece of land in Crestone, Colorado, and you see the Milky Way. I mean, you're insignificant. I mean, that's the real deal. I don't know what in the world we're doing down here. I think to be inspired to change things is the real challenge. I mean, you can get into conspiracy theory and talk about bioweapons and all this and all that, and it sells money. By the way, that podcast will sell and have 50 million viewers. But if you have something where you say, look, you have a lot of power. In your lifetime, you weren't born to sit around. What are you going to do? It's like John Lennon's Imagine. You have to start with the vision first. What do you want to have happen? And then since we're the creators, then you have to have the vision in front of you and go for it. Go for that vision. And you say, but there's only me and I can't do anything and I live here. And that's not true.
There are excuses.
Those are excuses.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at the 100th monkey theory of the monkey that washed the potato somewhere in I don't know, Australia, wherever it was, and then in India, the monkeys are all washing potatoes, but they never met. Then we have to look at what consciousness is.
Yeah.
The sea of consciousness. And I'm convinced that if enough people live in that, it's a semi-spiritual, not religious, but a semi-spiritual realm, and they have the vision and they want to manifest it, then somebody in Nigeria or somebody in Russia is going to get it too, because we're all one. We're all living in the sea of consciousness. So I really, first of all, I'm not very aware of all the messages that Billy got from the Pleiadians. I want to do more research there. I know that Wendell Stevens gave me a book, Messages from the Pleiades, that I read.
There are the contact reports translated to English.
Right.
But on Future of Mankind, there are all the contact reports, almost 900 now, and they are in German and English side by side. And it's it's all for free. It's an excellent site. It's 10,000 pages, so you have enough to read,
But people have to make an effort to read it.
Yeah, right.
Because these are messages that are being given for our own benefit.
For our own benefit, right. And but you have to take some time at least to get a little bit into it and then see, does this make sense, or do your own research. And then also when they speak about spiritual issues, that you think about that, how programmed am I? Or when Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world, then you see, what am I doing for that? What do I want to see? Like you say, first you have to have a vision.
You have to have the vision.
Yeah, and then if you see, I want to see more peace, well, do I kind of radiate peace, or, am I at war with everybody around me, and then start working on yourself.
Well, it comes from us first, but I'm just worried about the people say I can't do anything. Yes, you can.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, we can. Yes, we can. And I was just thinking of the idea of the Pleiadians. People don't understand this, but Spielberg knew about the Pleiadians because when he did Close Encounters of the Third Kind, it was in Devil's Tower, Wyoming, and the white people call that tower Devil's Tower, but the real name of that tower is the Mountain, Bear Mountain, and it was the Lakota Sioux. And the legend around that, because the indigenous people know the truth, believe me, is that the bear was chasing the seven sisters, or the seven sisters of the Pleiades, up the mountain, and he was scratching up the side of the mountain with his claws, and he was chasing them in the sky. So the idea that the Pleiades, the seven sisters, are not only reflected in Devil's Tower, which I hate calling it. Yeah. I also was in Peru, in Chavan, and I saw the cups of the Pleiades filled with water, representing the Pleiadians, that the indigenous people in Peru were already looking at the Pleiades and were already getting their inspiration from being initiated in the original truths, which are not changed in modern day world.
In South America, and Latin America. They're much more open to it, and also not only intellectually, but also for them it's like almost natural. Oh yeah, there are others out there in space, and sometimes they visit.
Well, we were doing a documentary on the case of Ricardo Gonzalez, which is really interesting, and we ended up in Yungay, where there is a mountain it's just as tall as Everest, called Huascaran, and we were in a bed and breakfast. And Ricardo had said, there's a base inside with people. And so I decided to go to the bed and breakfast lady that owned the bed and breakfast. She was making us sandwiches. And I said, see the mountain over there? I said, did you ever see the brother, they call them Space Brothers, the Hermanos de las Telas. Did you ever see anybody come to? Oh, she said, yes, they came to speak to my son when he was 10 years old. And then she continued making sandwiches. She didn't say, give me a television show, I'm going to write 5 books, I'm going to go to a conference. She said, she continued making the sandwiches. Yes, they came to speak to my son in his bedroom when he was 10 years old. And she says, yes, they're in the mountain. And then I talked to the peasants in the field, or the people that are tilling the ground. I said, do you ever see anything? And they said, oh, yes. Yeah, they're Space Brothers. They've been watching over us forever. And I'm going, I can't, but they have a history. They have a history. The indigenous people, like the Lakota, the Native Americans, and the indigenous people of every country, know that the secret is in the stars, that their ancestors come from the stars. So they start with that. You can't do that in the States, because the United States is 200 years old, and it was religion and politics that started this culture. But you go to other cultures and they're already there. It's easier to speak to them about this. And the thing that's exciting for me is I could collect data. I could ask the lady in the kitchen, and I just wrote down what she told me, and she's not lying. She doesn't care about, writing a book or doing anything. And I could document this, and I realized in my last book, All of the Above and Beyond, has seven Latin American contactees from Peru, Bolivia, Colombia. I went to Bogota, Colombia, and they're talking about actual people coming off spacecraft, but they add one thing. They say that they have to go to a remote area and they have to meditate and fast for at least 3 days. So it happens to them like that, like in the Chilca Desert with Sisto Paz Wells. But he wasn't alone. He was with 10 other people. I mean, it's not one guy. It was 10 other people that saw the craft land and the people inside the craft. So it's pretty amazing to me, because it's multiple witnesses after some days of meditation. I have to ask what kind of meditation they did. And in that particular case, it was mantra. It was Om.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good.
So I have to learn how they do it in other countries.
Yeah. Well, what kind of information did they receive? Or, I mean, they saw them, but was there also some kind of communication?
Yes, that we're all related.
Yeah.
That we're all one, that we're all related, that the last one that I went to was in the Valle de la Luna in Chile, and I was with a group of 200 people. I saw the ship stop after 2 hours of meditation, but the message was that the planet is in ecological trouble.
Yeah.
And the message was given to Ricardo that be careful of water. They said water, flooding, hurricanes, that water was precious on this planet, and we weren't taking care of the planet. That water, and I remember he was in tears, that the message was about ecological. Now, in the 50s and 60s, it was nuclear. We had Eugenio Siracusa off the, island of Sicily. who met with human type beings, and it was nuclear, come together, stop the. It's always come together. I mean, I think of the Beatles when I think come together over me. I think of the Beatles. I thought, whoa, I thought they were rock stars, but actually they were giving pretty heavy messages.
Yeah.
Hey Jude, imagine, come together.
Let it be, But basically relax, let it be.
Yeah, let it be. But they were involved with Maharishi at that time, with Indian philosophy. You have to look at the date, who they're involved with, where it's coming from. And I'm one of the people that says Billy was trained in India. He had his contacts in India. People didn't know that. They don't know anything about his background. Yeah. They know nothing. All I know is the pictures. And I go, no. These people are not going to pick somebody off the street. They're going to pick somebody who's ready to be able to disseminate a clear message because he's had the background already. Yeah. They don't know he was in India. They don't know his early days.
Yeah, folks. Asket was 11 years, and she showed him a lot. That was at that time when he was also in India. But before that, from 5 years to 16 years old, he was in contact with Swat. And he was really like a true wise man. And he taught Billy so much. It's like unbelievable. And he told me one story which I find so hopeful. Once Swat was the only one of the Pleiaren who can mingle with us, and our energy does not affect him, or did not affect him. And so they stayed in the jungle somewhere in Brazil with a tribe for a couple of months even. And Billy said that in this tribe, there was never a fight in the whole time. We have our arguments here and there, for example, in Hinterschmidrüti, as it is so common in the world. But they never fought over anything or argued over anything. It was this incredible harmony all the time. And they lived peacefully there deep in the jungle. And there was no problem that they were living with them. And they didn't tell them that they're from the stars or so, like Swat or so, but that they, okay, you're here, and can we stay here? Yeah. It was basically so easy living, and the rainforest is so rich, it provided all the food, and there was no need for any conflict. But you have also tribes in the jungle that eat themselves, It's like... It's so amazing, I said to Billy, this range of human behavior on this planet, that it's mind-boggling that there are people who are in the same forest, in the jungle there, who are so peacefully, and there's like another group just maybe 100 miles away or less who are so warrior-like, and it's all mental.
It could be a test. It could be, I always thought, if there were other planets that were inhabited, that maybe they had a collective consciousness, which means it's almost a Christian consciousness. You do what's good for your brother. But we don't. We have free will. We don't have a collective consciousness. We don't do what's good for everybody.
We are not connected. I think the main reason is that they had they had they did everything for the community, and there was no intent of harming anyone. And they also killed animals, but just to have food and to survive, but not for as a joy of hunting or so, and just to stay alive. But they were connected, and you have indigenous people they have this connection to nature maybe a lot, but sometimes they also kill each other. But you have also these indigenous people who really got it. They are not only connected to nature, but also they know, we are all one in the sense. And
well, it's almost like the United States. So we're in Colorado.
Yeah.
The early pioneers had to cooperate. They wouldn't have lived.
yeah,
They had to make a community. They wouldn't have survived.
yeah,
And it's different from the East Coast, which were, very, very populated,
and competitive.
urban areas.
Yeah.
But if you're coming out here in a wagon train, that's why everybody says, well, everybody's so friendly here in Colorado. I said, yeah, they have to be that way, otherwise they won't survive. They had they had all kinds of challenges coming out to, and I live in Colorado, which is like maybe 200, maybe, let's see, it was 17 in the 1700s that it became a state, we're dealing with, you had to be a community to survive. You had to help each other. It's a different mentality than when you shove 20 million people together in a city where it is, dog eat dog and competitive. Because I think we do have a competitive nature, but if you have to get together, all of you to survive, you're going to have to change the way you think about each other because you need each other. So that's a different kind of mentality.
Yeah, this competitiveness, I think that was the example I just gave, that they didn't see each other in a competitive way. I don't think that is actually natural, but also that it's trained into us in school, the grade, you try to have the best grades, and then there's also this competitiveness with the other students, and it's everywhere, kind of, you're competing in business, they're competitors, and they where he lived with, when Billy lived with Swart, among them, he said, there was like, not that they were drugged all the time or so,
No, but even in southern Italy, where my family's from, there's a lot more family-oriented community.
Yeah.
It's family. I don't know how to explain it, but for me, it's useless to go there because it isn't like that. Things are not ideal. I think I can see it. But to stay in that space for me is very negative, and I can't do it because then I think of all the bad things in the world and you can't change it and everybody's this way. I really need to be with John Lennon. I got to imagine, and when I spoke in Argentina there was 1,000 people in tents with their babies, with their children. They brought their children to this conference, and it was an outdoor conference in a big lawn in Argentina. And all these people were there, and they were making food because they love to eat. And they were making food, and then it came time for the lectures, and it came time for me to speak. I said, I'm not speaking until they play Imagine. And over the loudspeakers, Imagine went out to 1,000 people, and everybody in that audience was crying. And I think there should be, I think it should be in the United Nations. I think it should be played everywhere. But then what did we do to John Lennon? We shot him. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, John, you had the right idea. You did it with music. How can we do it? How can you and I do it? Because we can't do the music part. How can you and I do it so that we inspire? We don't have to show them the bad stuff. We need the bad. The bad stuff is there.
Yeah.
So then I thought, how can we do this? How is the easiest way? So whenever I'm at a conference right now, I don't let anybody leave unless I write down on a piece of paper what they're going to do to change the world. And it doesn't have to be change the world. It could be feed a squirrel. It could be bring food to the old man down the street. It could be, can I draw a picture? Because everybody does things, and you're making documentaries. You just told me that this is your way. This is your talent in your way. So may I encourage you, that's the space I want to be in, to encourage your listeners and your viewers to be active, not to sit in the pot of rot and to be discouraged, because it's going to be there anyway, whether you're there or not. But the fact that we were born in this time, we were born in these years of conflict and challenge, means that we are those lights that can maybe change one little tiny thing. I always say, my work, data is data. It doesn't really matter. Nobody reads it. Nobody cares. But if I can move the needle just a millionth of a millimeter to the right, and because I was born and I did this, then all of this work and all this fatigue and all the money I spent on all the research and everything is worth it. And I'm just have to share that with you because that's my view of research and what needs to be done here. Now, talking ironically enough, Britt Elders and Britt has supported me forever because Shirley MacLaine sees my work and she loves that I don't do the negative stuff or the conspiracy theory stuff. Yeah. She sees that I do a lot of inspirational stuff with the real people. I've had conferences on artificial intelligence. I've had conferences on ESP and remote viewing. I've had conferences on the early days of UFOs. I've had conferences on just different things that are data. And so Britt, when she told me that you guys were going to release this book again, she said, Paula, I know you went to see Billy. Would you endorse the book?
No, that's a Figu book, or that's the American version or English version of. No, she released the two books that they released in 79 and 82. And she made out of these two books one book. Yeah, and she released it as a 45th anniversary edition.
But with Billy's blessing.
From Billy and also some of the messages.
Yeah, but he wanted this done.
Yeah, well, she did it basically, and then told Billy about it, and then he said, "Okay, I want to have 300 books." So she did it by herself. That was great.
Well,
and I think that, and also that Shirley. Shirley wrote the foreword, so that's great. That's like the first time I think that she officially kind of acknowledged, I was there, and I think it's a real case. He's telling the truth.
She's in. I saw pictures of her in the early books, she's one of the people that validated it. However, that's how I got involved. I'm just telling you how I got. She called me. She said, "Would you endorse the book?" And I said, "Absolutely."
Yeah.
But I'm endorsing the book not because of opinion, but because I went there. Yeah. I saw Billy. Yeah. I interacted with the people, not because I don't do anything on opinion. What people say, "What do you think of this?" I said, it's not about thinking. It's about, did you do the research and you come to a conclusion? And so it's not a belief system. When you say, do you believe in UFOs? I felt like saying, what religion do you belong? Belief belongs to religion. Data is data. Data means it's hard and fact. These are real photos. They've been examined. Britt and Lee and Wendell, God bless them, did 7 years of research with the top level people.
And Jim, Jim
Delatoso.
A lot of work,
Yeah.
Yeah. So just all the labs he contacted, he went through them like methodologically and so much work was put in just to get into the labs was really hard. And then, but then they did the work, and Jim said, nobody ever came back and said, oh, this is a fake. They said, well, we don't know what it is, but we can't find any fake, And then they made their estimate how the size of the object, but nobody came back and said, oh, this is faked, and here you can see, and so on.
Well, there was no Photoshop until 1992, so I don't know what people are thinking. They should be doing their homework.
Yeah.
And the fact is that I talked to the people in the town, and they said they had seen craft too. So it
that surprises me that they told you.
Yeah, the owner of the bed and breakfast where I stayed, I stayed really close to his property. It was down the street from his property. It's a bed and breakfast. It was, you could walk up to his property, and the bed and breakfast we stayed at they had a little restaurant too.
Yeah.
because I do that. I'm an investigative reporter. This is not about believing anything. You don't believe. It's like you have to do the research. And then I told you the story that I went and Figu was there and they asked me not to speak to Billy. And Billy was standing there staring at me because I think Billy had talked to Wendell and knew I was coming. But I was polite. I didn't want to go and do something that I wasn't supposed to do. But at 3:00 in the afternoon on the Sunday, they told me and my two counterparts, we're going to have a peace meditation. You can come back afterwards, but German is the perfect language, and you guys don't speak German, so you better go and come back. And they thought we were going to a restaurant or something, but we went down to the Semyazi meditation garden, and we started to meditate for peace too, because we figured we could do the peace thing too. Why are they doing the peace thing? And then I look over to my right and the fence, and there's Billy staring at me. I mean, staring at me. And of course, I'm not going to go over and speak to him when they told me not to. And within minutes, he walked back up the road. It was a gravel road, and he sent me Guido Musbrugger, the writer, the author of And Still They Fly, and I love that book. Yeah, that book is detailed. That book has everything in it. And Guido came down and he said, Billy sent me to answer your questions. He said, I speak really good English, and I was very grateful to Billy. But the fact that because when I saw him, I said, why isn't he at the peace meditation? It's like, why is he down at where we are? But he wanted very much to communicate with me. But it was one of those, diplomatic things where I wasn't going to overstep my bounds. But I want to go on camera and thank you, Michael, for everything you're doing and tell people that I believe that whoever's visiting, in the case of the Pleiadians, they have a definite message that we can learn from and be inspired to change something. I can't say what we can change individually, but it's real. The case is real. The photos are real. He's real, and I'm not surprised that they would pick someone who had a spiritual backing in India to do this. Yeah,
and that what he writes, if you really get deeper into it in the books, what Billy writes, it's self-evident. But you have to take the time and also do the effort to really think about it and then reevaluate. And then things start to open up step by step. And people are then changing and have different view, and then hopefully also see, okay, this is so important to me. I try to make a difference now and write a book or lecture or something on the internet, whatever it is, or let the other people know. That's what I want to do. It's just that people know that this is a true case and that they shall investigate it and that they know about Billy. And if they then get deeper into it or not, that's their thing. But that they know about Billy and that not there is covering up, and that's well, what
Billy,
I try to...
The Billy Meier case is one of the most controversial cases ever in my career. I've always supported it because it's not belief. It's not about believing. Yeah. It's about the data.
Yeah.
People forget the data speaks for itself, and the idea that the pictures are too clear is stupid.
Yeah, too good to be true. Well, what does that mean?
What if a civilization wanted to be seen because they had a specific message, and the only way that human beings who are very primitive could understand is through photos? So the thing is that in the 1970s, you've got to remember this, in the 1970s, there's not only these photos. In Southern California, there's Paul Villa photos. There's so many photos of UFOs during the day, not lights. As I said, it was the most controversial case I had encountered. I've had more arguments about this, but it isn't about belief. Belief has nothing to do with research. It's about data. And if the data shows that this is real, then it's not about believing. It's about, well, it's real. If you can't wrap your mind around it, then you better get that something happened in 1970s in Switzerland. And then you have to ask yourself, why did they come here?
Yeah.
And what do they have to do with the human race? You have to ask yourself the important questions. The important questions is not, do you believe in UFOs or do you believe the pictures are real? Not after 7 years of meticulous research by Wendell Stevens and Lee and Britt Elders. And by the way, for me, Wendell Stevens was the greatest researcher that ever lived. I mean, he did so much work. And because he traveled, because he did field research, he didn't do it from his house with the telephone. So I'm just thank you for the opportunity of being able to talk about data. I think we need to revisit this. It's very interesting, and probably revisit all the messages Billy was given.
Yeah, that's what the people. It's out there, as I said, Future of Mankind and other websites, and they have to just look at it and read it, and then take it in and think about it. And I thank you very much that you came, took the time, and it was great having you here.
Thank you.
I'm really happy that we met.
I'm happy we met, and someday I want to go back.
Yeah.
Actually talk to Billy.
Yeah, actually talk to him. I will make sure.
I know.
I really like your work, especially that with Colonel Corso. That is, I think, very important work that will be recognized later.
Well, yes, also the Trinity crash, because whatever crashed there, or whatever event happened there, was a statement against the atomic bomb, and we need to look at. I think we need to look at all the messages from the cosmos and how they're given in different ways. So, thank you for the invitation.
Thank you for coming.
Okay.